trying to send my text message. I'm trying to corral my kids. I kind of walked away from that 5 minutes later thinking like, man, like that was rude of me. I should have helped out more. Like I should have put the phone down, and I shouldn't have had that mindset of it's kind of my job just to stand here, even if I'm just not really doing anything important.
What is up, everybody? And welcome back to the Schooling Struggle Podcast. It is our belief that the only guarantee in life is that we are all going to struggle, and how we choose to embrace our struggles is what empowers us to become the best versions of ourselves. How is it going? My name is Pete, coming to you from Heartland, Vermont, and our contributor of every month, Mr. Doug Anton, also coming to you from Vermont. Where are you hitting us from? What town do you live in, Doug?
Hey, Pete, I'm out in West Hartford, so not too far away from you.
West Hartford, Vermont. When we were looking for houses, we looked in that area.
I used to live in Heartland, so we've reversed spots, I guess.
There we go. I love that you're coming on once a month, and it's really cool for me because we see each other in the halls every day at school, and you have different thoughts and ideas and topics and all sorts of subject matter that you would love to cover in these conversations. And I know tonight is one that you're pretty fired up about and one you've been diligently planning for. So we're just going to jump right into it if you're cool with that.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right. For the listeners out there, Doug wants to cover unconventional wisdom. And when he asked me to prepare for this show, I had a lot of fun thinking and preparing notes. So we are both locked and loaded with all sorts of notes. I think I'd like to lead off, Doug, if you're cool with explaining to the listeners your definition or your perspective of what unconventional wisdom is.
Sure. Conventional wisdom, as I see it, is something that is generally accepted as either a theory, a belief, a view, a mindset, an attitude, or even a fact that most people have. Therefore, unconventional wisdom is the flip side of that coin. Something that most people may not realize, that many people may not see from that perspective, often maybe kind of the outside view of something. Oftentimes, it can be wrong. Historically, there are many outside views or unconventional wisdom that turned out to be inaccurate. But I think recently, as we have a better understanding, especially about things such as health, well-being, some things around the natural world as well, we have a better understanding of how things really are. And therefore, we've been able to kind of flip some conventional wisdom on its head and see the unconventional wisdom that lies behind it.
I always describe Doug on this podcast as really outside the box thinker. And that's one of the reasons why I love having conversations with you both on the microphone and off. And I'm really excited to see what you're going to share tonight. I know you have some kind of big topics or big categories or buckets, as you might say, where we can apply different perspectives and things that we've learned about maybe taking a second look and not always going with what the masses are thinking or saying or doing. I think for the listeners out there, this is going to be one of those episodes where there's lots of tangible takeaways and lots of things that you can apply to your life at the end of this episode. And that's the goal for this episode.
Love that. And I know I appreciate, I know that comment was probably meant for the audience, but maybe a reminder for me as well. I know that I have a tendency to sometimes be too abstract or too big picture and not necessarily that tangible. So certainly my goal is to make this realistic and something you can take away with. The first example that I want to cover here is something that is very surprising to most people, but on second glance, I think will become pretty obvious to most listeners. It comes to us from World War II. So in the middle of World War II, there's all these planes that are returning from battle, and oftentimes they've been destroyed or damaged or pretty heavily. And at some point, the generals and the military leadership says, you know what, we need to decide where we're going to more heavily armor our planes. We want to protect our men and women serving the armed forces. And so what we really need to do is commit more to the defense of these planes. And so what they did is they commissioned this study. They had this really, high-tech mathematics group, actually like out of Columbia in New York City. And they took all these pictures of planes that are coming back from battle, and they're taking, they're analyzing them pictures. And, where do we need to armor these planes better? It turns out most of the planes that came back are surprisingly not really shot up in their engines, but they have tons of bullet holes in their fuselage and their nose and their wings and their tail. And so the person in charge of this says, well, I guess we need to armor those parts more. That's where they're being hit. And so they embark on this pretty massive, campaign to increase the armor, which of course adds weight and decreases fuel efficiency of these planes. And they send them out and, okay, we're going to have less accidents. We're going to lose less lives. We're going to be safer as a military. That's not what happened. And the reason for that is the entire premise is they were looking at the planes that were coming back from these battles and looking where they had been hit. And they never thought to look at the planes that had been downed, the planes that never made it back, because it was those planes that were the ones that weren't making it. Those were the spots that the planes really needed to be reinforced at. I use this as an example, not only because my love and interest for history, but also because it excellently illustrates the concept of it's very important to ask the right question. Oftentimes, our intuition tells us something obvious, and it seems so obvious, nobody questions it. The planes come back from battle, we take a look at them, we look where there's more bullet holes, and we say, that's the place that needs more armor. Of all these military generals and all these top leadership and academics, that no one, it took years for someone to finally say, wait a second, we're looking at the wrong data, we're looking at the wrong information, we're asking the wrong question. And so I use that example just to kind of get us started off by, when in life you're looking for information, you have to ask yourself, what question are you asking and what question are you not asking? Often the questions that go unasked are the ones that could be the most important.
I love that. I think it might be kind of hard to study the planes that crashed, but just the fact that they were investing their time and energy on the planes that came back, not even considering the ones that were going down because they were weak in certain places. It's really interesting.
I think it also illustrates the point of incomplete data. So often in life, we look at the data that's available to us. So we look at the things in front of us, information that we have access to, and then we make conclusions based on that. And then again, we forget to ask the question, what are we missing? What are we not looking at? What information do we not have access to that would add to our understanding or help us make a different or more complete decision? And so that's kind of tangible takeaway number one, is make sure you're asking the right questions. And one way to do that is by asking yourself, what question am I not asking? What information do I not have? And where could I go get that?
Sometimes I get freaked out by the word data because I hear so much in schools and in math, and I've never viewed myself as a math person. So what I'm coming around to is when someone says, like you just said, we have incomplete data. And I think when we're thinking about our lives and how I'm trying to be the best version of myself, I don't think of that as data because I feel like I'm a human and I'm living and it's not data. But I just replace the word often for my own life, data, with perspective. So an incomplete perspective. And that's helpful for me because I think it does ultimately come down to data. But when I think about how I can be a better version of myself, it's of my mind, of my body. Sometimes the data thing kind of scares me away. So I think when I'm thinking perspectives, that can also be kind of data analysis or self-analysis.
I think perspectives is spot on. And I think that goes back to something we talked about a few episodes ago with thinking fast and slow, with the concept, which is very similar to tonight's topic in general, taking the outside view, right? Before you make any kind of major decision or you're thinking about things, we tend to seek information from those in our inner circle, from those who are in those same kind of roles or situations. And we don't sometimes go outside to get that outside perspective. And that can lead us to kind of having blinders on. So I think perspectives is synonymous with data in this instance.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Take us outside.
All right. My next one is a famous quote, and you may recognize it. It's by Warren Buffett. Do you know who Warren Buffett is, Pete?
He is, by many measures, an incredibly successful investor.
Yes, the Oracle of Omaha is his nickname. He's one of the famous value investors of all time and built Berkshire Hathaway company that's worth billions and billions of dollars. His famous quote is, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful." And I love this quote for so many reasons because, for one, it perfectly encapsulates that kind of unconventional wisdom that we're looking for tonight. Most people would say, wait a second, right? If people are saying the market's good and the stock market's going up and everyone's making money, that's when I should get in on it, right? And wait a second, when everyone else is fearful and the market's crashing and people dumping their stocks, why would I want to buy then? The market's crashing. Everything's going down. And Warren Buffett flips that on his head. Be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. I think that really encapsulates a lot of the financial advice that I've given to my friends in my life, because when the market's at an all-time high, what are the chances it continues to go up, or what are the chances that it goes down and there's a correction? Now, does that happen today, tomorrow? I don't know. Nobody knows. I would argue it makes a lot of sense that when everyone around you is being greedy, that's when you should be a bit cautious. And when everyone else is, worried and things are on the way down, that's when it's time to take advantage and buy that dip and that decline, hoping for the rebound on the other side.
So I'm fortunate in that people in my orbit, when they come across like a cool quote, they'll send it to me. So I'll get like multiple a day, which is really, really special for me. I love it. And Todd, the co-host of this podcast, who's not on this evening, today sent me this. If you are acting like a sheep, do not blame the shepherd. You cannot herd lions. So wake up, roar, and you will be free. I kind of love that. It's kind of similar.
Yeah, no, I like that as well. The idea is, if you look around, often conventional wisdom says, go with the crowd, right? If everybody else is buying this stock, they must know something you don't. If everyone else is selling this thing, they must know something you don't. And Warren Buffett wisely says, we need to be cautious with that attitude. Now, this doesn't mean, of course, play the complete contrarian here, and that, when everyone in the world is saying, don't touch that company with a 10,000-foot pole, yeah, maybe it is, not worth to, mortgage your house and put all your money in that one stock. But conceptually, with the ups and downs of the market, right? The stock market is one of the only things that people, worry about, and they often are upset about when it's on sale, right? The stock market goes down. The way you think about that is it's on sale. Now, most people say, oh man, now my portfolio is down. I'm down thousands of dollars, whatever. Nobody looks at that, or very few people look at it and say, great, that's an opportunity for me to buy more at a discount. And over the long run, I'll be able to get those returns back. The second thing in the realm of finance that I think is really interesting, and this is more kind of socially as well as kind of personal finance implications, is, have you ever heard the phrase, the customer is always right?
Yes.
And that's always bothered me, because the customer is always right implies that those who are serving the customer, whether it's the cashier or the waiter or the hostess or whomever it may be, that they are somehow kind of beholden to every whim and desire of the customer. I did some Googling to, where did this phrase come about? Because it's kind of the sick, twisted idea that the customer is always right. And what I found was, really, it stems from the concept that of supply and demand. If you're a company or anyone and you're trying to put out some kind of product and people aren't buying it, you shouldn't sit back and whine and complain. Oh, nobody understands my genius invention, and it's their fault. They're missing out on my $1 million idea. Maybe your idea is not that $1 million idea, right? The market speaks the truth is maybe a better way to think about it. But I encourage more people that I talk with and interact with and have these kind of conversations to consider that quote, the customer is always right, and look for where it's playing out, and do or say something about it, right? And treat the people, especially the people in the service industry, especially now more than ever, right? We know that people in those industries are leaving in droves, right? All the jobs deal with interacting with people, whether it's teachers, whether it's restaurant staff, whether it's flight attendants. We know that ever since COVID, people have generally treated each other worse, and thusly people don't want to be in those industries. But I want to challenge people to say the customer is not always right, and we as a society should be more accepting of when they're wrong.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of like kindness is always right. And it sounds so simple to be kind. I've been in the service industry. I worked at Disney World. I served tables for 10 years, all these things. And I've been on the other end of that. And it is really interesting in where our culture has developed this sense that the customer, exactly what you said, the customer is always right. It's actually pretty funny. My friends and I we'd work at Disney all day, and then we'd come home and just tell stories about the stuff that we saw. An example, just a quick anecdote, is my buddy worked on the train that goes around the park at the Magic Kingdom, and people want to push their kids' strollers up the handicap ramp, but they need to leave the handicap ramp open for wheelchairs. So one of my buddy's duties was to keep strollers off the handicap ramp and tell the people, I'm sorry, if you want to bring your stroller up here, you have to go a different route. And people would go berserk that my buddy wouldn't let him push these strollers up the handicap ramp. And on Christmas Eve, a guy flipped out so bad at my buddy and actually swung at him. And my buddy reported him. The guy was kicked out of the park and all these things. But it's like there's this entitlement of the customer to do what you want and to get what you want. And it's quite fascinating if you think about it.
I think that one takeaway, immediately from this concept is, we've been taught as a society that the dollar speaks, right? Vote with your dollars. Yep. And that, if I'm a paying customer, I demand, I'm entitled to. And so I think asking ourselves where all of us may fall guilty of this, even in small ways that we don't think about. I'm at Hannaford's the other night. It's late. I have both my kids with me, and, kind of trying to get through the grocery store at 8:00 at night on a Sunday. And, I'm texting my wife and trying to figure out, do I have everything? And am I picking up, some pizza for the way home or whatever? And, the poor cashier is checking me out, and also like she's doing the bagging, and I certainly could have helped bagging, but I'm trying to send my text message. I'm trying to corral my kids. I kind of walked away from that 5 minutes later thinking like, man, like that was rude of me. I should have helped out more. Like I should have put the phone down and bagged my own groceries. It would have made the line go faster. It would have helped everyone out. I shouldn't have had that mindset of, well, I'm the customer, and it's kind of my job just to stand here, even if I'm just not really doing anything important. So I think we can all be guilty of this. So try to ask yourself, is the customer always right? And what kind of customer are you being?
It's also these giant conglomerates that make these kind of expectations for the transactions. And then, like you said, kind of the people lower on the chain are the ones that are left in the wake of dealing with that, right? It's easy for management to say the customer is always right, but management isn't working the cash register.
Hey, that's called writing a check that you don't have to cash.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of cashing checks, my third kind of concept for finances for tonight is, I think the conventional wisdom of most people is debt is bad. Credit cards are bad. Taking out huge loans is bad. I mean, I'll ask you, Pete, like what is your initial take on when someone says like, should I have a credit card, and is it bad to use a credit card? What would you say?
The way I understand that the system is set up, it's actually behooves you to have a credit card because the large majority of people are buying stuff with cards now instead of cash, and there's a transaction fee. So there's an automatic fee being put on every product that anybody's buying to pay for the large amount of people that are using credit cards. And if I'm not using a credit card, I'm kind of being left behind. So the way that my family operates is we use a credit card to buy everything. So we can get the travel points and get the cash back and the bonus points and all these things. But we're also disciplined enough not to buy anything that we can't afford. So at the end of the month, I pay it out. And then the way the credit works is you got to build credit over time. And that's just one of the ways to do it. So I think if you have the discipline to pay off every month what you spend, it's an amazing thing. The question is, do people have the discipline to do that? And that's a tricky one for many people.
I think you're spot on, and the concept I really wanted to introduce is that exactly what you just said. That credit cards are tools, and debt itself is a tool, right? People often complain about the banks and interest rates and all these things, and there's certainly many valid complaints and criticisms to be leveled. But if you kind of step back and zoom out and take the larger perspective, it's a pretty nice ability for someone, a middle class family, to be able to afford several $100,000 home, which they never could do unless someone had that money, i.e. a bank, and loaned it to them at relatively low interest rates. I know interest rates are higher right now, or at least as they've been historically. Credit cards specifically, I think a lot of people are concerned about kind of like safety and security, right? If someone steals my credit card, they can do thousands of dollars to my damage to my credit, or they can steal my identity. And I would posit that especially when you're doing things like traveling and things like that, if you're carrying around large amounts of cash, that's pretty dangerous, right? That's easy to lose, and there's no recourse. I can't go back to the bank and say, hey, that the $500 I took out of the ATM, I lost that. I don't know where it is. They're not going to give it back to me. But you see a fraudulent transaction on your credit card, you can dispute that. You can contact your bank and say, I'm not sure what this is. I wasn't me. Track that back, have it charged back or cancel the charge. That's a pretty nice benefit. The fact that, if you lose cash, it's pretty much untraceable. It's gone. You have no idea where it goes. But if you lose your credit card or if it's stolen, in a matter of seconds, you can contact your bank and cancel that credit card. So especially for something like traveling, people often say, what do you do when you travel? How do you get access to money? I think a credit card is this genius tool for traveling, where you can kind of keep track of your expenses, have access to cash, and have access to money when you need it in kind of a safe way. You're spot on to also point out the benefits of things like points and rewards and things like that. Almost everywhere in society now is becoming a place that accepts cards, and many more places are becoming cashless. So I would encourage more people to view credit cards as a tool, right? It's not good or bad. It's not inherently evil or inherently this awesome thing. It's a financial tool, just like anything. And it can be used harmfully and in the wrong way, but it can also be a tool for a lot of good. It does come back to discipline. And you're right. Discipline is, I guess, only people can answer that question for themselves if they're disciplined or not.
The tool is only as good as the individual who's using it, right? You could say that about anything: a mechanic, a carpenter, a magician with the wand, whatever it is, a lacrosse stick, a golf club. And I think that this is no different. It is pretty alarming when you look at the interest rates of credit cards of people that don't pay them off per month. It's crazy. And then if you borrow cash against a credit card, it's like a 30% interest, which is, if you do the math on that, is quite stark. But the points are there to be had. So if you're going to buy the thing anyway, you may as well get 1 to 2 to 3. One of my credit cards right now gets 6% back on groceries and 3% back on gas. But I was going to ask you, and this might be something for a future episode, is there certain websites that you know of where if people are looking for like certain points on credit cards or what's a good credit card for them, kind of where to start that search?
Yeah, for sure. One website I would strongly recommend is called Nerd Wallet. It has a variety of kind of calculators and tools, and you can kind of put in, a profile of, I'm a 18-year-old high school student, and I just want a card just for gas or whatever. Or I'm, older and I have good credit and I'd like to travel and earn travel points. So you kind of set your parameters and it will spit back some cards. In my personal experience with it, it's fairly objective. And that it kind of gives you all information equally. It's not favoring. It's not like always sending you to one company or something like that. And there's also a site that I also recommend called The Points Guy. It's I think it started off as one person. I think it's a collection of people now who are really focused on kind of how to maximize your return on those points. I don't know if you want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but there's whole communities online of people who focus on churning is actually one of the technical terms for people who kind of maximize their credit card. I know people who get $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 every couple of years for travel by doing this. Now it's not easy. I don't want everyone to go to quit their day jobs to go do this right now. I personally take more of a moderate approach where I'm not necessarily going to try to squeeze every penny out of the rewards points. Take the time to do that. But I think there is some value in something like that. I also think there's huge value, and I'm curious to get your take, Pete, on the parallels with nutrition labels here. But what you just mentioned with your credit card, that ability to track an account and pull up on a daily, monthly, weekly basis. Hey, how much did I spend on gas this month? How much did I spend on takeout this past month? I think talk about data and perspectives, arming people with that information is hugely helpful because we know it's human nature to sometimes, at the end of the month, look back and say, I probably didn't spend that much this month, right? We went out a couple of times, but it's not a big deal. But then when you actually add up, wow, that Dunkin' Donuts, that morning Dunkin' Donuts every day was $300 this month times 12 months, right? That's a lot of money. And if you would ask me at the beginning of the year, do I want to spend several $1,000s on Dunkin' Donuts? I'd say no. But yeah, here I am. So arm yourself with data, I think is invaluable.
Yeah, I scroll through it every month just to see, one, that there's no fraudulent charges on there, and then two, just to get an idea of kind of where we're at. But I think the bottom line is when it comes to any of this stuff, it's amazing how hard this is for many of us, but don't spend more than you have. Let me say that one more time. Don't spend more than you have. If you start there, that's a good spot. And then you can start talking about saving or putting away X percentage. But if you're spending more than you have available, no matter what mode you're going to go down, whether it's the bookie on the corner or a legitimate credit card, it doesn't end well.
Be curious to talk another time about what if we replace money in that sentence. Don't spend more than you have, but what about time and effort and attention and other things too? I think the fundamental concept is super sound there. Don't spend more than you have.
You mentioned food labels. In preparation for tonight's episode, you asked me, hey, what are some things from your end on Unconventional Wisdom? And before we hit record on the show, you and I were just kind of comparing notes, and we have some similar stuff. So feel free to jump in here with me. But I think one that's big, and it still lingers after decades and decades, is that people believe that low-fat foods are healthier than the whole foods. Low fat, reduced fat, no fat. All those types of foods with those labels, from all the research that I've done, says that those foods are more processed, they have more added sugar, and they're less healthy and less nutritiously dense than their whole food counterpart. So example would be skim milk versus whole milk. There's no evidence that shows that skim milk is quote unquote healthier or more nutritious. It just has less calories, but less calories doesn't mean better for our body. Same with breakfast cereals, flavored drinks, with yogurts, with salad dressings, with baked goods like muffins and cookies and those types of things. And I mentioned the milk factor, and you also see that like reduced fat cheese. I think a lot of people, especially in my generation, I'm a child of growing up in the 80s and the 90s, and then my parents thought that was the best option. And the truth is, and the statistics show, that when low-fat, no-fat foods came to market and were really popular, obesity climbed even higher at that time. So if anything, the low-fat, no-fat craze made the health of the country and the Western world worse. It's an easy jump to make to say, well, if I don't want to gain fat, I'm not going to eat fat. or if I want to lose fat, I got to eat less fat. But that's not actually the case. All calories are not equal. So by that, I mean gasoline for my car has no calories. That doesn't mean that it's nutritionally dense and I should be putting in my body. And a lot of the ingredients that the food companies were substituting when they're pulling the fat out has proven to be much worse for us than the actual fat itself. So I think when it comes to like unconventional wisdom, I think we're coming around on that as a culture, but a lot of people are still left thinking like, oh, apple juice, orange juice, these things have no fat. These things are really good for me to start my day with in breakfast. I mean, it's the same as soda. It's just straight sugar. I think that's to be aware of. So what I'm trying to drive home is how can we eat less processed foods and particularly less added sugar? And a lot of those low fat, no fat options have more sugar and more processed substances in them.
I think this really is, I don't know if you will call it a failure. It depends how you look at it, a success of marketing, right? I know that the sugar industry, or not the sugar industry, but maybe the processed food industry was a driving part in kind of vilifying fat 20, 30, 40 years ago. Even just the name, right? It's go back to that conventional wisdom. If I give you, I have food A and food B. One of them is has fat. One of them is fat free. It's so instinctual to say, well, fat is bad, right? Obesity and fat, like that's not good for my body, right? So I'm supposed to take this other option. I think that speaks volumes to it. The other thing, talk about, you said the needles may be moving and people are coming around on this. I hope so. I hope that's true. I'm a little discouraged when I see, walk around the grocery store and you still see on packaging that in big letters, fat free or 97%, fat free. First of all, I mean, I don't even know what that means when you say 97% fat free. Something's either fat free or it's not fat free. And then not to mention, the stuff that's low fat. The fact that those things are marketed and that's touted as like a positive thing versus I am slowly starting to see more things that say no added sugar. Some things say low sugar, some things say no added sugar. I'll be happy when the tide is turned and we see more things that have a warning label or a label that says no added sugar as a health benefit versus low fat or no fat.
Well, it's crazy. Most candy, like gummies, like sugar-laden candy, has that on it. Like Sour Patch Kids, no fat snack. So I will say this: like 5 years ago, finding whole milk yogurt was much more difficult than it is for my family now. I can go into most grocery stores and find whole milk yogurt that doesn't have any added sugar, which was really difficult to find, or at least around where I shopped a half decade ago. So I think that that's changing, and also the high fructose corn syrup thing, the sucralose, and a lot of these things that were literally banned in Europe years and years and decades ago. They were illegal to put in foods in Europe. Now we're starting to, the food companies are starting to kind of withdraw putting as much of that stuff into food. So I think there is some of it's coming around, but it's just slow.
I think when it comes to conventional or unconventional wisdom with food, everyone is kind of at an unfortunate disadvantage because where are we supposed to learn this stuff, right? That's the beauty of conventional wisdom, and it has. I'm not saying all conventional wisdom is worthless. There's a very valuable place for societies and groups of people to share knowledge, share common understandings of things. But diet and food is one of those things where what your neighbors and your friends and your mom and dad and everyone kind of tells you or what they did just because it works for them is not necessarily the best way to do it.
It breaks my heart. I think so many people out there, and I certainly don't have it all figured out. I'm not sitting here claiming that I do, but that people really believe in their heart that they're doing the right thing for their health, or they're doing the right thing for the health of their family. They're doing the right thing for the health of their kids by serving them food A or food B for breakfast. And many of us are being duped. And it's really hard for me to see as a teacher to see that unfurl in front of me with kids being like, oh, Mr. D, check this out. I'm having a healthy lunch today. And it's a yogurt with 40 grams of added sugar and a granola bar with 30 grams of added sugar. That's like 3 days worth of added sugar in those two snacks. But they truly believe that they're eating healthy. And in a lot of a lot of energy drinks that say no sugar, or these other spin-offs of drinks, flavored drinks that are made to be healthy. And it's so hard for me to see each day of people truly doing their best. They're spending their hard-earned money thinking that they're making some positive gains, and they're being tricked. That's really the best way I can put it.
That's why we can do our best to educate people and arm them with the information and perspectives and data to make better choices.
Speaking of that, I wanted to add to that, one of my unconventional pieces of wisdom is I hear this often, that eating healthy is too expensive. And I will absolutely say that eating healthy is more work and it's far less convenient. But in doing a little background search into the type of foods that people will eat and that will enjoy eating, eating healthy doesn't have to be more expensive. So whatever the current budget is doable. And part of the reason why I feel so confident saying that is that we as a Western world spend more money per capita or per family on prepared foods than we do groceries. So we spend more money on foods that someone else prepared for us, fast food, gas station food, these different types of things than we do on groceries. So if we were to just spend less money on prepared foods and more on just straight up groceries, that's a really, really good start. And I'm convinced that people say, oh, my grocery bill is too high, but let's also look at your prepared foods bill as well. I guess you can go into your credit card slip and figure that out and see that eating healthy is not as expensive as one might think, given some of the strategies that one can use to do that.
I think this is one area where the investing parallels pretty nicely too. Right. Most people, when they think about investing or saving for the future, short or long term, they're willing to take some kind of short term commitment, short term cost. Right. I'm taking out my paycheck to put for the future because they say, I know I'm going to value this in the future. It's curious that people struggle to do that same thing, or they struggle to do both things, of course, with food. If I'm eating healthier and cleaner and more nutritionally dense foods right now, I make an investment in my future, and maybe I will have hundreds of thousands of dollars less in healthcare costs in my 60s and 70s and 80s, and my quality of life will be so much better. So it's one of those things where, yes, there is a cost right now, and maybe it is, the organic and the whole food. Maybe some of that stuff truly dollar for dollar is more expensive than its counterparts for now. But as more people demand that, as more people shop for that, we go back to supply and demand and the customer being right. That's one area where, as more people are consuming that stuff, that will bring more companies, more competition to the marketplace for those products. And B, you are committing to an investment in yourself that pays off in the future, not just necessarily financially, but in health and in wellness and in other ways. There's a great subreddit I follow called Buy It for Life. And basically people spend all this time saying, hey, I need to buy new winter boots. What's a good brand? What's a good type that I don't want to buy another pair of boots next winter. And often, the examples they give is, yep, you can go buy, a $50 pair of boots but you're going to go through them every couple winters. Or you could buy the, $300 pair of boots, which may seem extreme and exorbitant, but all of a sudden you're getting 15 years out of those boots and it actually saved you money. So maybe we need to start the Eat It for Life subreddit where we talk about making those healthy choices now, so you're getting that long-term benefit.
It's really hard when you do the thing today and you don't necessarily see a result. People say, oh, how long does it take if I start working out? How long does it take for me to, really start to notice it? And generally speaking, and I like this number, it's about 30 workouts, right? So if I'm going to do 3 workouts a week, it's going to take me 10 weeks. If I'm going to do 6 workouts a week, it's going to take me 5 weeks. But it's hard to see in that one workout my fitness start to evolve. And it's the same with, I saved $5 today, so what? But if you save $5 every day, you make your own coffee instead of swing by Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, that starts to add up. But it is really hard to recognize in the moment that this thing is doing me good. I agree with everything you just said, but I was still content that the majority of us can eat healthy now and save money now at the same time. And a lot of it is we just need to consume less.
Maybe we'll have to do a live podcast sometime. Maybe it's not that exciting, but let's both go to the grocery store. We each get $100 and we see how much stuff we can get. I'll take the unhealthy stuff. You take the good stuff. We see how we do.
See what lines up. But I do think a lot of people that are looking to eat healthier probably could stand to consume from less calories overall. So that's money saving right there. But
that's a great point. When it comes to health and well-being, I know we just talked about diet a little bit. Are there other areas of those kind of topics where you see a lot of people kind of have a misconception or a misunderstanding where your research, the information you've gathered makes you kind of go in a different way with that unconventional wisdom?
One thing that I love is there's more and more and more content coming out about the efficacy of sleep and how truly important sleep is. And we're moving away from, at least people that are really serious about health and human performance and even mental cognitive performance are moving away from I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm going to be productive 20 hours a day and sleep for 4 hours. We know that if we sleep 8, those other hours of our awake time are so much more productive. And our body sleeps for a reason. And our body sleeps to recharge and recover. And people often associate with any kind of sleep as restorative, high quality sleep. And what we're learning is effective, efficient, high quality sleep in smaller or shorter doses is more restorative than a long sleep that doesn't hit those deep zones of recovery. So I'll just make this really quick. We have The first zone of sleep, which is you're awake, you're kind of dozing. Then you have your light sleep, and then you have a couple different stages of deep sleep, REM. And if we don't get into those deep stages of sleep, our body doesn't restore and recover as much. So some of the research we're finding out is like 6 hours of really, really high quality sleep is more effective, more restorative, and more productive during our waking hours than like 8 hours of crappy sleep or even 10 hours of crappy sleep. And we have many sleep disruptors in our sleep environments that we might not even realize are inhibiting high quality sleep. So any kind of device that's emitting any kind of light can be a sleep inhibitor. So I can be sleeping and my alarm clock that just shows the time 24/7 and the big red digital lights, I might be sleeping, but I might not be hitting those deeper zones for as long or as effectively as if that clock was rotated 180 degrees and is now facing the wall. People that sleep with TVs on, I know many of our students sleep with their phones either in their bed with them or next to their bed, and their notifications are dinging all night long, and they might think, I sleep through them. But those are disrupting sleep, whether we recognize it or not. A couple of sleep disruptors, other than lights, are temperature of the room. 65-ish seems to be ideal for most people. Anyone who slept in a really, really hot room in the summer or really, really cold, you just can't seem to get warm, can vouch that temperature really matters. Different sounds, anyone who's had a newborn in the house can vouch for what that is, or a neighbor with a barking dog, or you live in the city and there's car alarms going off. These things can really inhibit our sleep, as well as alcohol. Alcohol is proven to be a huge sleep disruptor. Andrew Huberman, who's really well known in the kind of the health and wellness longevity world, has all sorts of research and studies coming out on how alcohol really inhibits sleep. Again, you can fall asleep, you can pass out drunk, but you're not hitting those deep zones of restorative sleep. And then lastly is an erratic sleep routine. So if I get 8 hours every night, but I'm going to bed one night at 4 p.m. and the next night at 4 a.m. and the next night at midnight and the next night at 6 p.m., my body doesn't really wind down and restore and recover as if I got 6 hours, went to bed at the same time every night, got up 6 hours later. So I am not here touting 6 hours of sleep. I think everyone should really strive for 8 or more hours of sleep because that seems to be the magic number. But while we're in bed, these sleep disruptors can really inhibit our sleep. And I think we often think, and the conventional wisdom is, sleep is sleep, but the quality of the sleep is huge.
When I do on Mondays, I kind of just do check-ins with my classes and say, hey, how was your weekend? What'd you do? The number one answer from kids is sleep, I think.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think when I kind of push them, I'm like, really, like, what does that mean? Like, you just you were in bed all day? And like often I think what it means for them is they lie in bed late at night on their phone and either dozing in and out, or sometimes they fall asleep with their phone in their hand, their screen time. I mean, I've literally had kids tell me like my screen time is 12 hours yesterday because I literally like fell asleep and it just continued to like scroll by itself, or still on, people are snapping me or whatever. And then in the morning, they wake up at 10, 11 and noon, and they kind of just, it's been this one continual kind of bleary dream state where they were just on their phone / in and out of sleep for,
they're in that doze, they're in that first stage.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole night.
They're never getting deep. They're not. And again, I don't mean to sound like the old like get off my lawn kids, but I worry specifically about our students with their phones and with that lower quality of sleep, especially because a lot of them think like, oh, it's the weekend. I am getting recharged. I was in bed for 15 hours yesterday. I'm recharged, but yet they're still kind of coming to school dragging a little bit. So. Quality is better than quantity is what I hear you saying. And 8 hours is that magic number that we want to strive for.
Huge. Yeah. And then the last thing that I didn't mention is screen time before bed, like that blue light coming in through our eyes, going into our body, disrupts the quality of sleep when we do eventually fall asleep. And I noticed that we watch a movie on Friday nights as a family, and I'll watch a movie and then try to go right to bed. Whereas if I read before going to bed, I just sleep so much better.
And this is one of those evolutionary things, right? That's just, we're hardwired from hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution to say, okay, when the sun goes down and it's dark, like you probably should go to bed, and then you'll wake up when there's light again. And yet with all of our artificial lighting and electronics, we've kind of overcome those natural challenges, but not necessarily to our benefit in that case.
I'm not one of these people that's like sitting around like counting days to retirement. I love what I do every single day. But if I could have it my way, I would wake up with the sun every single day. I hate getting up 3 hours before the sun comes up.
Likewise. In the summer, I hate waking up 3 hours after the sun comes up, but I'm one of the lucky few that has that luxury. So every now and then. Do you have more on the topic of health or well-being? I have a couple other ones I want to hit before we wrap up.
Yeah, I'll just make these quick. Strength training. There's been a conventional wisdom that older people should not strength train, and that it's not healthy or good for older people. In fact, we're finding out the exact opposite is the truth. It's use it or lose it, right? Your structure is only good as the force that's put on it. So my bones are not going to stay strong. My muscles are not going to stay strong unless I apply my strength. We don't stop exercising because we get old. We get old because we stop exercising. On the flip side of that, young kids' strength training stunts growth. That is a really, really deeply ingrained kind of mindset that has, from the research I've done, was come around in England way back in the day. And there's zero research that shows that any type of strength training stunts growth. Now, there could be outliers of humans here and there with different deficiencies and different stuff going on with their body. But generally speaking, we can use impact loading. So that's non-weight bearing. If kids were to, jump and hang and play, those things build strength. It's not saying strength training is simply lifting weights in a gym environment, but there's lots of things that we can do to shape our kids and to prepare our kids for a healthy life of wellness. Strength training is a big piece of that. So by all accounts, strength training in kids does not stunt growth. In fact, the worry is that kids' joints aren't ready enough to do certain types of movements. As long as we keep them safe with how they're moving, we're good to go. Strength training is amazing for everyone, young and old.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm so glad that you've got me on my relatively mild twice a week strength training routine right now. And I must be 30. I must be 30 workouts in.
You're way more than 30 workouts
Definitely seeing the benefits, at least I think. A few more kind of broader topics that I wanted to give a couple specific things that I think I feel like I hear a lot of people say or think and act upon that I don't necessarily believe is the case. I think there's a lot of evidence behind that. The first one is kind of a mindset thing that I see many, especially in American society. And that concept is that quitting is for losers, that you should never quit. And I, over the past few years, have just, it's one of those things where, on this podcast, I heard about it, then I read it over here, and then a person, like literally everything in my world right now is kind of throwing the signs at me that it's really healthy to quit sometimes. It's hard to do, but it goes back to that sunk cost fallacy. We've kind of mentioned that in a few episodes in the past, right? Where we've put so much time into a relationship, a job, a project, whatever it is, that we kind of feel like we're trapped and committed to see it through. But I think there's just numerous evidence and numerous anecdotes that basically say it's okay to quit sometimes. Not easy to do, not an easy choice at all. But that we shouldn't feel committed to seeing everything through. You're not a failure if you quit on a project and then switch and take your time and energy somewhere else. Relationships, especially early in your life, right? Relationships come and go, and you're certainly quite unlikely to find, the one on the first try. And so not being afraid to kind of cut the cord and move on to another opportunity. Jobs, the same way. I mean, how many people do you know, Pete, in your life that are, been working at the same place and they're miserable, but they have this sense of, well, I've been here 5 years, I might as well see it out. And they have that attitude, and they're 25 years old and they have, another 30 years left plus, but yet they've been taught you don't quit, you stick it through kind of no matter what. Have you seen that in your world?
Man, there's so many ways that I can respond to this. I think that I'll say this, is that people say that time is our most precious commodity, but I believe that as long as we're alive, time doesn't end, right? There's always time as long as we're awake. So for me, it's attention, and what's getting my attention really makes me who I am. And I think that when I'm doing something and my use of attention is not directing my life in a way that I think is in line with who I say I want to be or who I think I want to be, it's time to pivot. And I think that we can feel better about our decision making simply by just replacing the word quit with the word pivot. Because quitting is, I'm not going to do anything, but I'm just going to pivot. I'm going to take my attention, I'm going to put it elsewhere in something that's more fruitful for where I am in my life right now. And that is absolutely, Doug, one that I struggle with. A couple examples from my life. If I start a book, I have to finish it. And I know 3 pages in, sometimes I hate the book. And someone once told me a really good time to fish or cut bait in a book is 100 minus your age. So whatever that number is, that's when you can quit on a book. See it through to that number. But once you get 100 minus your age, you'll know at that point whether you should stick with that book or not. And the truth is, there's so many books that I want to read, and I'm not going to read all the books that I want in my life, which is kind of a scary thought. But why spend time reading a book that I don't like? It's funny because our daughter came out of the womb and we raised her to say, we're Driscolls, we don't quit. And really what we should be saying is, we're Driscolls, we pivot when needed. So I think it could be semantics or words for some people, but that mindset shift, I think, is super important.
No, you're spot on. You're right. Pivoting is a much better phrase here, and I want to be clear that I don't mean quitting in like when I'm 50, when I'm push up number 47 out of my 50. I shouldn't be like, well, I told everybody to quit the other day, so I might as well just like stop here. But you're exactly right. I think the focus on attention, time, effort, the people we spend our time with, the projects we work on in our personal lives and our work lives. Those are the things that when we're no longer getting that positive return on investment, right? Not to make a financial comparison again. That's when it is time to get out and move on to the next thing. And I think that's important caveat there. Move on to the next thing. We don't just quit and give up and go home and pack up, but we move on to the next thing.
I definitely certainly struggle with that one, and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that as in raising our daughter.
I think with kids, and especially with young people in school as well, you're right. It is hard. I do want to encourage determination, grit, hard work, perseverance. We don't want to quit when the going gets tough, but you want to pivot when you're no longer getting something of value out of what you're spending your time, money, effort, attention on.
I love the way you put that. It's perfect.
The last thing I wanted to cover, if we still have time, Pete, would be a little bit of in the realm of relationships, and I mean both family, friendships, romantic relationships, kind of everything in between. And there's really just two specific things that I hear a lot of people say, or kind of in kind of common culture, that I think can be dangerous. The first is that people often form friendships and relationships out of their circle, or the people that are in the same things as them, the people who live in the same neighborhood, the people who play the same sports, the people who are in the same classes, and people who are similar or like them. And I know in high school and when you're young, that's kind of a natural connection, right? You're drawn towards people who have the same interests, same personality styles. One thing that I feel personally as I've gotten older, and in the people who I've talked with that have really, I would say, like powerful, committed, deeply loving, adult relationships, I think the best word to use to describe the two individuals in those relationships is complementary. As I think about some of the closest friends in my life over the past few years, we usually meet over some sort of shared activity or common interest, but the friendship really deepens over the areas where we can fill in the gaps for each other and supplement each other. And so I think the term complementary doesn't get used enough.
That could be a whole different episode, to be quite honest. And we could dive down that rabbit hole at some point. I'd love to do that. But the biggest piece of relationship advice that I've been given, and can be applied, like you said, can be applied to a marriage, can be applied to parenting, colleagues, anything, is it's more important to be kind than to be right. I'm just going to say it again one more time so it can really sink in with the listeners. If you want the relationship to flourish, it's more important to be kind than to be right. And that all relationships move at the speed of trust. So that relationship is only going to go as far as the level of trust that's inherent within the relationship is going to take it. And I think that that's super important. So when you have that complementary approach to it, combined with that trust piece, and then you throw in that kindness piece, I think that's a really good recipe. And at least I can speak for myself. I've been around couples who are bickering and who are not enjoying being with each other, and it's not a really comfortable, happy place for me to be. But when I find myself in the presence of what I would call a really cool couple, a couple that are complementary of one another, it kind of inspires me to be more complementary. I'll always come back to it's more important to be kind than to be right.
I think that's super sound relationship advice. I've certainly found that to be true in my own life.
This is awesome. Thank you so much. I love the way you think. I love having conversations with you, and I look forward to our monthly sit-downs, Mr. Doug Anton.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Pete. And as always, appreciate the time and the conversation.
To all the listeners out there, we appreciate your ears. We thank you so very much for your time. We are incredibly grateful for your attention. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out to schoolingstruggle@gmail.com with thoughts, ideas, perspectives, or potential guests that you know that would make for some great storytelling and some good conversation. We are the School and Struggle Podcast. We are out.